Proverbs 18 and 10:10 in the Pew Bible. When I was in high school, I had a circle of friends, or 5 of us, that we played a lot of games together, board games and things like that. We didn't have girlfriends, so we had each other. These are good friends, and I'm still friends. One of them has been here. Came over there on a Sunday night once. He was passing through. It was one of these friends. My favorite games that we played, of the variety we did, were war games. Generally World War II themed games. And they're elaborate board games of a sort that are way super complicated. One of probably my best friend of the 5 and I were committed to these. They're the kind where you had, like this one game, legit, you had to read like 90 pages of rules before you could play. Like I said, we didn't have girlfriends, so we were doing this. But anyway, we did that a lot. Now, you may or may not know that I also really love chess. I learned to play chess in 4th grade, and I've played ever since. I'm regularly reminded of how good I am not. I play online, I play every day, and I play against people from all over the world. I'm a subscriber to this one website, and so that's what I do. The interesting thing I think about chess is that in essence, chess is a war game. That's what it is. It's a war game. The 64 squares are the battlefield. I've illustrated it there for you. Each army lines up on their side in 2 rows. That leaves 4 rows up for grabs in the middle. The 4 central squares right in the middle, those are the most important. Good players know that to build a stronghold there is to control the field. You try to hold on to that image for a little bit, and we're going to come back to it in just a little bit. Tonight we're going to be organizing the verses of this chapter. That it doesn't follow a close, discernible outline, but we're going to organize into 4 groups. And the overriding theme of this chapter is speech, or words. And so that just keeps coming back again and again throughout the chapter. So the first, the 4 sections, the first one is verses 1 through 8. And those are sayings on speech and fools. Sayings on speech and fools. Then there's 9 through 12. Sayings on strength, safety, and pride. 9 through 12, sayings on strength, safety, and pride. 13 through 19, sayings on speech and disputes. 13 through 19, speech and disputes. 20 through 24, those are sayings on speech and its rewards. So, speech and its rewards, 20 through 24. So this first section, 1 through 8, I'm actually going to back up like I did 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to read the last 2 verses of 17 and then right on into the first 8 verses here. He who has knowledge spares his words, and a man of understanding is of a calm spirit. Even a fool is counted wise when he holds his peace. When he shuts his lips, he's considered perceptive. A man who isolates himself seeks his own desire. He rages against all wise judgment. A fool has no delight in understanding, but in expressing his own heart. When the wicked comes, contempt comes also, and with dishonor comes reproach. The words of a man's mouth are deep waters. The wellspring of wisdom is a flowing brook. It's not good to show partiality to the wicked, or to overthrow the righteous in judgment. A fool's lips enter into contention, and his mouth calls for blows. A fool's mouth is his destruction, and his lips are the snare of his soul. The words of a talebearer are like tasty trifles, and they go down into the inmost body. Okay, so like I mentioned 2 weeks ago, we saw there was some overlap in the chapters thematically, and tonight we see that too, because those last two verses from the previous chapter, they're talking about speech, so that's why they're connected here. Learning to restrain our words is a great challenge for some of us. And I use the word us purposefully because, I mean, if you've never had trouble in this area, I feel like you're the unusual one. There are people that are just naturally reticent. They don't have trouble. And I don't want to make this study about me, but I can't really relate to that. Because you know how you hear people say they had some thing going on, interchange at a store with a person, with somebody at work, whatever, and then later they're like, man, I just didn't know what to say. That's never my problem. I might not know the best thing to say, but I always got something I can say. My problem is I got to hold back. Because the thing I might say, not always the best. I have a problem like that. People that are just naturally reticent, my dad, that's my dad, and then his son. It's just him. I didn't get that gene. I'm not like that. I am as unalike to my dad in that regard as I am in stature. My dad is about like that. People see me and my dad and are like, how come? I don't know, but that's how different I am in this regard too. The last couple of verses from chapter 17 shows us that one approach to wisdom is by what you don't do. A lot of times we think wisdom is like the things I do, this is what you don't do is what shows the wisdom there. A commentator I read said this is one of the few proverbs that holds out any hope for a fool to act with understanding. A fool can act with understanding by I can't tell you how many times at school over the course of 38 years I've been just because we all have enough experience to know that the thing about words, once words are said, they can't be unsaid. And now we live in a world where we have another area in which to exercise great caution when it comes to words. And that's words that are typed. Either this way or this way. That the text you sent when you were irritated, you know what? That's never going away. Have you ever sent a text and then you thought, wait, I have. Not mad. I didn't send one when I was mad once. One time I sent one, a friend of mine was having problems. And I sent a prayer request to Rachel about that friend. Only it wasn't to Rachel. It was to that friend. She was exceedingly gracious. She wasn't a believer, but she knew me, and we were good friends, and it was okay. But boy, once you send it, it's gone. And social media, that social media post that you thought was like really clever, that's going to ferment and not into something pleasant. One of the characteristics of the internet that we should be aware of, and we try to tell this to kids all the time, nothing is permanently deleted when it goes on the internet. Oh no, see, you can just delete it. Snapchat, see, it's really cool because you can send a picture and then it goes away. Yeah, not if they screenshot it. And they all do. That's why there's so many bad pictures of kids and others floating around, because we're like, well, trusted that it was just going to be there and gone. It's never there and gone. It's always there. It's always there. The words that we put out there in anger, they don't go away, and sometimes they grow, and that should give us pause. You might think, well, but a Christian, we'd like to think so. Rachel and I have a good friend from the first church where I was on staff. She got her back up about something. And so she was going to have this cathartic experience. She typed out a big letter about how terrible the pastor was and all this stuff. Only to find out later, that letter got sent to everybody in her email list, including the pastor, all the people at church she knew, the district superintendent, everybody. And she didn't go to that church anymore. So we have to be careful. So that's kind of those first couple of verses actually from the other chapter. An oft-quoted proverb is bad company corrupts good character. Bad company corrupts good character. With that in mind, we might think that being alone would be a preferable alternative. Look at verse 1. A man who isolates himself, seeks his own desire, rages against wise judgment. But see, we might think that would be preferable, being alone, as, not with bad company. At least you're not in bad company when you're alone. But the timeless Word of God says that it's not the case. It's not preferable. In fact, you might say, no, because there's a third option. Don't be with bad company. Don't be alone. Be with good people, right? That would be your third option. But I think this is a case where we can see really the timelessness of Scripture. I might wonder about someone 4,000 years ago and how being alone could be so bad. 4,000 years ago, you isolate yourself. Like, how bad can it be? You have limited impact, right? But now, I think the internet should give us cause to reconsider that mindset, because I think in this day, people are rarely truly alone. They might not be with another person that they can touch, but they're not alone. Verse 1 speaks of one who chooses to isolate himself, one who has options for company but chooses against that. It's very popular these days to identify yourself as an introvert. If you're not on social media that much, you don't know that. But it is very, very popular. It's very popular to get all your labels in line of all the things that are wrong with you. It's a sad state of affairs this day, but it is the case. A lot of people want to talk about how they're an introvert. It's a whole thing. You can find plenty of memes about, the church greeter getting ready to confront the introvert, because the introvert hates the meet and greet time. The introvert hates the handshaking and all that. Okay? So there's a lot of that going around. And I realize that there are some people that are naturally more that way than others, but I don't think that it's really a positive thing to revel in that, as though I'm an introvert and I'm really just going to lean into that and own it. No, I don't think that's a good thing. And this verse to me gives me some reason why I think that's true, that it's not such a great thing. It's that isolation. But look, with the internet in mind, I put to you that the introvert, the one who chooses to be alone, the one who is isolating themselves, they're not really choosing to be alone. What they are doing is they are choosing to be with their online community, their online friends, that group that will never challenge them in any way. If I'm with other people, they might say something I don't like. And then I have to deal with that. They might call me out on something I want to say that I don't want I don't want any pushback. And so I isolate myself. I pull away from people that I can touch so that I can be with people I'll never touch. My carefully curated group of people that I'll never touch. They are the ones that will be with me when I am alone but really not alone. If the one, they're carefully chosen never to challenge, because if they do challenge, well, that's easy. We delete them from the group and we don't have to worry about them anymore. That's really hard to pull off in person. If you worked with people ever, I put to you that you had people you didn't like sometimes. If you were a teacher, I guarantee you did. I remember, man, when I say that, unbidden comes to my mind. I've told you before, this girl, I did my best for her for 3 years. She was a sophomore when I got there. I wish she'd been a senior when I got there. In fact, I wish she'd been a graduate when I got there. But she was a sophomore for 3 years. Oh, she was hard to get along with. I did everything I could to reach out and make things good for her. But boy, I remember watching on her last day as a senior when she walked out of the band room and that door shut. And yes! So I couldn't delete her earlier. I didn't have that option. I had to learn to deal with it. But this sort of isolation is what goes on this day. It's not good. And it's bad for the same reason that we kind of inherently know, even without details, that like an ingrown hair or an ingrown toenail, we know those are bad things. This is an ingrown person. They become ingrown. The one that seeks their own company, they are retreating into what they perceive as a fortress. But I put to you that this fortress is different than the one we're going to talk about here soon, because rather than being full of windows where they can see what's going on around them, their fortress is full on the inside with mirrors. So they can constantly be seeing what they're thinking, what they've got going on, their own perspective. Everything points inward. If you spend too much time in the echo chamber of your own creation, you'll find yourself seeking your own desires more and more. And you'll have less tolerance for when your own desires aren't met. It's not a good way to live, but a lot of people live this way. And you'll find yourself raging, like it says in the verse here, against wise judgment. I know that we might immediately have an impression of the kind of person that seems to fit in this description, but I think wisdom would encourage us at this point to ask the disciples question. Is it me? Because I'll be honest with you. I quite like my own ideas. My ideas make more sense to me than most anybody else's. Not always because I'm right, but they're mine. I was having a rousing debate with another teacher one time, and she said, well, you just think you're right. And I laughed out loud and I said, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said. Of course I think I'm right. Why would I say it knowing I'm wrong? Don't you think you're right? That's not the question of who thinks they're right. The question we're trying to ascertain is who is right. Of course I think it. So I have to be careful in this area. Now, a further consequence of this type of self-isolation is found in verse 2. They might well be uninterested in being with other people, and they might become completely uninterested in what they think, especially if it's different than their own ideas. But they will quite happily and unabashedly share their own wisdom. They would like you to hear what they've got to say. This type of person, according to the sage, the writer of the proverb, this kind of person is a fool. I mentioned a couple weeks ago 5 different types of fools. This is the third type, the sensual fool, one who is not a person that is not unacquainted with wisdom, but uninterested in it. It's not a good way to be. Now, let's look at verse 9 through 12. He who is slothful in his work is a brother to him who is a great destroyer. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. The rich man's wealth is his strong city, and like a high wall in his own esteem. Before destruction, the heart of a man is haughty, and before honor is humility. I mentioned before that in chess, the center of the board is important. There used to be a chess club here at the junior high. I didn't run it, but occasionally I'd go down after school and kind of watch what the kids were doing, and sometimes I'd end up playing with them. It's easy to spot people that are somewhat ignorant of the importance of the board and what they should view that board as. Sometimes there are people that really like order and symmetry, and so they start on one edge, and they move this one, and they move this one exactly the same, and this one exactly the same, and then this one. Those people are going to lose. They're going to get beat spectacularly, unless the person they're playing is also equally foolish in the finer points of the game. See, chess is a war game, but it's a war game based not like on modern warfare. It's based on castles and knights and foot soldiers, all with hand weapons. That being said, we imagine an ancient battlefield. No airplanes, no machines of any sort, other than if you want to say like a bow is a machine. No mechanized anything. Okay? A great advantage in a battle like that would be information. A lot of times they don't know what's going on, and so you only see what's right in front of you. And so not having information makes it hard to formulate any sort of a plan. So if you're on the field and you can't really see what's going on around you, what would be a great benefit to you is elevation. So I try to think of that center of that board as the high point, like a little hill. Because if you can get there, then you start seeing what's going on around you better. If all around you, people are throwing things and waving pointy bits of metal at you, some sort of barrier between you and them would be a great benefit as well. And though I didn't mention it before, most of your army, when you play chess, are pawns. They're just like the foot soldiers. They're weak on their own. If you're a pawn and you're on your own, you're a target. You're just fruit ready to be plucked. So if you're a pawn, you don't want any part of isolation on the battlefield. Isolation, you're just done. You're going to be a statistic. All of this brings me to verse 10. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. It reminds me of a song. That's why we picked that song tonight. This is definitely a memory verse. This is an important one to keep handy. A strong tower. That's exactly what we need. We need a strong tower. The name of the Lord can be that to us. The name of the Lord gives us perspective. When we're on a battlefield, we may not be able to see what's going on. We need a vantage point. We need perspective. The pawn on the battlefield needs elevation. That's what we need also. We need to run to the name of the Lord, to get into that tower. I can't imagine a tower that isn't tall. That's why they picked that word. The word was chosen on purpose. The name of the Lord is not only tall, it's strong. It's a strong tower. We get perspective on what's going on around us as we consider the name of the Lord. When we consider the name of the Lord, we gain the perspective of all of that's been going on around us. With God guiding our perspective, well, then we can be more like that servant of Elisha who went out and he was afraid because all he could see was the bad stuff going on. But Elisha prayed that God would open his eyes, and all of a sudden he could see, wait a minute, there's a lot more going on here than I could see at first. Because his eyes were open and he could see the armies of the Lord. And Elisha could say, there's a lot more people on our side. There's a lot more on us than them. In fact, it worked out that way. The enemy was defeated. The tower of the name of the Lord provides that for us. It doesn't eliminate the real battle going on. Some of us, have real battles going on. Real stuff that's happening. We might not be able to fix it. I hate that. I want to fix stuff. I want situations to be fixed. I might not have that option, but the option I do have is to Go to the name of the Lord, the strong tower. The righteous run into it. They're safe. All our problems are solved. No, it didn't say that. We're safe. We're with God then. We get perspective on what's going around on that battlefield. The name of the Lord gives us... I'm skipping something, sorry. When the enemy's all around you, and the attacks are coming fast and furious, you need a shelter. The tower can be a shelter. Isaiah said in chapter 59:20, when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard against him. That's like that other song we sang tonight. When the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord lifts up a standard against him. The only sure defense in such a situation is to get something between you and all of the stones and the barbs and the stuff coming your way. You need a tower, preferably a strong one. The name of the Lord will be your strong tower. The name of the Lord gives us protection. You get to him, and you know that he is in control. He's on the battlefield lifting up a standard against the enemy. Again, we should think of an old battle, not a modern one. I don't think that in modern warfare there is a soldier whose job it is to have the flag. But in old battles there certainly was. That guy was important. That flag was important. If that flag fell, it was a sign of real trouble. And so someone else would run up, risking life and limb, to raise the standard. You raise the standard, it gives you hope and courage. When that flag is flying, the soldiers are heartened. They're encouraged. It shows the battle's not lost. When the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard against him, and you know the battle's not lost. You know you're not alone. You know you don't have to fight it all on your own. The name of the Lord gives us presence. If you're on the battlefield and you're alone, well, you're a target. You're just fruit ripe for the enemy to pick, and he will do just that if you don't find a way to get to safety. Where do we find safety? Well, in the strong tower of the Lord. And what else are we going to find there? Well, we're going to find that we're not alone. Others have run there as well. They're present with you. That's why I just can't wrap my mind around people that say things like, well, you don't have to go to church to be a Christian. Why wouldn't you want to? Why would you want to be... You may not know this about chess, but if you get your pawn starts on the second row. It's got 6 to go over there to get to the other edge. If it gets to the other edge, it can be promoted. It can be turned into another piece, like another queen, for example. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, it's really important now. But that's hard to do. And you certainly don't do it by marching it out there by itself. It'll get taken every time. And the closer it gets to being better, the more of a target it is. Everything goes after that once it gets over there. Why would you not want to be with other people that are fighting alongside you? The name of the Lord gives us perspective. The name of the Lord gives us protection. And the name of the Lord gives us presence. The rich man, see, he's got his own, he just has his wealth. But he really trusts in it. That's his tower. And it's a house made of cards. You can't count on that. Okay, verse 13. 13 through 19, I'm not going to read it all. For time's sake, I'm going to read 13. He who answers a matter before he hears it, it is folly and shame to him. That verse really should inform our interpersonal relationships, I think, more often than it does. How often is trouble stirred up, not always willingly, because we answer a matter before we hear it? Put another way, we respond to something without knowing all the details. I hate it when I do that. And I have done that. When I do that, I just never fails. I always end up looking like a mope. Because I went off on something and I thought I had all the details and turned out I didn't have it all. It causes trouble. I don't want that. I know that we're all familiar with Jesus' admonition to judge not, lest you be judged. I think a big part of what he was saying there is the kind of judgmental spirit that creeps in when something happens and we decide why it happened that way. Somebody does something or doesn't do something, and we ascribe motive to what they did. We don't go talk to them about it. We just decide. That's judgmental, not in a good way. We proceed on our own course of action based upon faulty knowledge then. I don't think a lot of times when we do that, I don't think we mean to do wrong. We just run ahead of information. We answer a matter before we hear it. I remember a time when I learned the value of confrontation at school. Many people are so desperate to avoid confrontation that they'll do almost anything to avoid it, and it just causes more problems. And I understand that because I've lived that way a lot. But my last few years of teaching, I purposefully chose a different course. When something arose, rather than sulk about it, or worse, go talk to somebody about the issue or about the people or whatever, I would just go to that person directly as best I could with a smile on my face and just bring it up right in front of them. That, hey, this happened, why? Am I missing something? And in every case except one, it made it so much better. Now, there was one time it didn't resolve it because the person was committed to being, they didn't want to resolve anything. But most of the time it fixes it. Avoiding confrontation at all costs or conducting the confrontation in an artless way may well lead to offense. Now we have to look at verse 19. A brother offended is harder to win than a strong city, and contentions are like the bars of a castle. We don't want that to happen. The sage uses battle images again to tell us how serious those kinds of things are. We want to be careful in the way we deal with things. A smile it's good to do. It's disarming a lot of times. Verse 20 through 24. A man's stomach shall be satisfied from the fruit of his mouth, from the produce of his lips shall he be filled. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. The poor man uses entreaties, but the rich answers roughly. A man who has friends must himself be friendly, but there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Just take a look, a couple of things here. The death and life and the power of the tongue. We can build people up by the things that we say, and we can immediately tear them down. Most people, I'm sure not everyone, most people are so wired that you can compliment them and they inflate. And you can regularly tell them they're doing a good job, you appreciate this, I liked what you did there, on and on and on and on, and it just boop, 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 boop. But it only takes one thing to say negatively, and you might as well have stuck the pin in the balloon because they're crushed. And at that point, they can't remember all of the good things that you said. That's not because they have a problem. That's because saying hard things to people, we have to be careful with that. Some people we have earned the right to say things to. Most people we have not. We have to be careful. We have to be careful. Life and death in the power of the tongue. Those who love it will eat its fruit. In other words, you like talking. You're going to eat the fruit of your words, good and bad. We have to be careful. The poor man uses entreaties, but the rich answers roughly because they can afford to. Rich people don't have to mess around with stuff. It's not evil to be rich, but rich people can be cavalier about things. It's just the way of the world. It's not new. That last one, though, think about that one. In days gone by, I've had many, many conversations with my own children and with other people's children about friendship and how we develop friendship and how we develop friends. A lot of times we bemoan the fact that we don't have friends. But in reality, a lot of those times, what we're really sad about is that everybody else around us is not taking the initiative to seek my friendship. It's much more convenient for me if other people approach me in a friendly way and do things for me and seek out my thoughts and my companionship and all. That's great. I love that. But most of the time, that's not the way it is. And so I've had these conversations where we're sad when that doesn't happen. But that's never been my experience, by the way. I've never been such a force to be reckoned with that people couldn't stay away. And I would be selective in my friends. Never had that. I don't know too many people that have. Some have, but that wasn't me. No, most of the time what happens is that we have to be a friend if we want a friend. There's a lot of times I've developed a friend over the course of my working here in town that took years to develop that friendship. And he is the best friend I've had in my work career. Still is. But there was a lot of times when I was the one seeking him out. I'd go down to his room for years before he ever came the other way. I'm just comforted by the fact that in Proverbs, we see that issue is addressed. A man who has friends must himself be friendly. But there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother, which is almost like a throwaway line here. It's just like the very last thing, and there's yes, because sometimes those friends, well, being people, sometimes they disappoint us. They're not available. They're busy with their own deal. How many times have you thought, well, I really wish I could talk to so-and-so. And then you think, well, they're probably busy with their own deal. And they may well be. But you know who's not? God. He's not busy. He's busy, but he's got time for you. I mean, he's busy. He's doing everything, but he can. There's never a time when you get a busy signal from God. There's never a time when you go to God and you want to, I'd really like to pour my heart out to you. And he says, can you do that tomorrow? Never. We might feel like he thinks that, but he doesn't. There's a friend that sticks closer than a brother. Let me add a word, I think that it won't hurt the scriptures. There is a friend who sticks closer than the best example of a brother we might imagine. Because you might have a brother that was like, well, it might have been not a great brother. I don't know. It's like sometimes at Mother's Day or Father's Day, people think, well, I didn't have a good... Okay, we get it. I'm not trying to be careless or cavalier. I understand. But they're saying here, a friend that sticks closer than a really, really, really good brother. The kind of brother that's going to stick by you no matter what. There's a friend that sticks closer than that. And he's Jesus. He's there for you. He said he'd never leave or forsake you. And he said that knowing that you were going to have your moments like I've had my moments where you're just a mope. You did dumb things. You did things that like any self-respecting friend would leave you for, but he won't. He won't leave you. You can't make him do it. You can leave him, but he won't leave you. He will stick closer than a good brother. And I think you should take comfort in that. So remember, there is a tower. You might be facing a battle. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run into it and are safe. You need to remember that tonight. Let's have a word of prayer. Father, thank you for your word to us tonight. Thank you that your name is a strong tower that we can run into. We can find new perspective. We can find protection. We can find presence in your tower. We can be safe there. No, solutions don't always come like we think they should. The answer to our prayer doesn't always happen the way we wish it would, but we know that we can be safe in your tower, that we can find those things, Lord, that you've spoken to us about tonight, Lord, and we know that in the long run, we'll understand better. We'll understand better why we had to go through some of the things we did, and we'll see how you went with us every step of the way. We thank you that you are a friend that sticks closer than a brother. The best brother we could imagine pales by comparison to how you stick with us. You're always with us. Help us to be with you. And we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pastor, I forgot to ask for prayer